Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, atrocities committed by Russian forces in Ukraine have sparked widespread accusations also of war crimes. We've heard Ukrainian president saying from Bucha recently that this is a real genocide, what we have been seeing there. But even US President Joe Biden has accused Russian forces of committing acts of genocide in Ukraine. We're joined today by Rebecca Hamilton, a former Reuters correspondent, also a Sudan correspondent for the Washington Post. She has also served as a lawyer in the International Criminal Court's prosecutor's office. And she's now an associate professor of law at American University, Washington College of Law, with a research and teaching focus on national security law, international law, and criminal law. She has been closely working on the analysis of the prosecution of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Rebecca, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
So let me ask you straight. You have been in conflict zones and you carry quite a lot of experience on disaster and crimes committed. I know experts are divided over declaring Russian atrocities in Ukraine a genocide or not at this point. But what do you make of it?
So I think it's very clear that atrocities are happening that can readily be characterized as war crimes and crimes against humanity. It's early to make a legal determination of genocide from the perspective of international criminal law. And that's because the definition of genocide under international criminal law has this very specific meaning that makes it really difficult to prosecute, because you have to not only show that atrocities occurred, whether that is the horrific killings that we're seeing, the reports that we're seeing about mass rapes taking place, you need to show that. You need to show that there is a particular perpetrator who intended to do that. But on top of all of that, you also have to show that they did those acts with the specific intent to destroy the Ukrainian nationality, Ukrainian people, in whole or in part as such. And it's connecting up those pieces that is really difficult and often takes a long time to put into place. Even if you have statements coming out of parts of Russia that seem to suggest a desire to wipe out Ukraine, it is a different thing from a prosecutor's perspective to connect that up to the actual acts on the ground. So that's why I think it's early from the genocide to call the genocide question, but I absolutely understand why people are asking it.
So who's going to determine whether a genocide is occurring? Is it lawyers, prosecutors? And how can we really prove there is intent?
So proving intent is difficult in any criminal case, even if you think of a domestic prosecution, because you need to get inside a defendant's mind effectively and convince the court what they were thinking and why they took the actions that they did. So yes, this is ultimately a question that is going to be in the hands of the lawyers. And at the International Criminal Court, if they were to pursue a case of genocide, in addition to war crimes and crimes against humanity, then, ideally you would get the smoking gun, the direct order that says you need to conduct these killings or these atrocities in order that we can destroy the Ukrainian people as such. In most cases, you don't get that kind of evidence. And so it is a case of building up the patterns over time so that you can make the inferences to the court that this is the most likely explanation of why these acts were undertaken.
Now, one of the main reasons the discussion is heated around this, though, is perhaps because the use of the term, some might assume, can trigger pressure to stop the war, which is of course heavily desired by all sides. But is this the case? I mean, does this work this way? Once, let's assume we determine this is a genocide, hypothetically, can we, justify a military intervention to stop it?
Yeah, you're pointing on something that is a real misconception out there. I think in a lot of communities, people assume that once you say something is genocide, then it will trigger military intervention. It doesn't. It doesn't as a matter of law, but also as we look in terms of the practice that we've seen historically, it also doesn't do that work. But there is an idea, particularly in communities that have been facing these atrocities, that they need to get the label of genocide attached to their situation in order to really get the serious attention of the international community. And I think that's a very unfortunate situation that we've landed in, because the reality is that crimes against humanity and war crimes are absolutely horrific. They are more than enough and more than we would ever want to see in order to attract the attention of the international community. And in fact, in the case of Ukraine, and I would say in contrast to other atrocity situations that I've seen outside of Europe, I do think that minds are focused on this even without adding the label of genocide to the situation. But the important question from an international criminal law perspective right now is, can investigators get in there, secure the evidence that they need to hold people accountable, no matter what the ultimate legal characterization is?
And the thing is, we have seen genocide be declared, better than me. Individuals being charged and sent to trial, even prison, after their actions. But isn't it so that if we wait after it's over, it's too late? I mean, people who suffer right now, they don't really care how we call it. And again, how can we legally act fast, do you think, to put the right amount of pressure, but also to be effective in stopping this right now?
So I think if we're looking to international criminal law to stop the atrocities in real time, we're setting ourselves up for failure. International criminal justice, for better or worse, and usually worse, is a slow process. It takes time to build rock solid evidence that can hold someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And so really the pathways that we need to be looking towards, the actors that we need to be looking towards to stop the atrocities now, are the political actors, are the diplomats, are the role of the sanctions, the things that can be working in real time. The priority on the accountability front is to gather the evidence now. But those cases are going to take months, if not years, to come to fruition. And so we can't be turning to those as the mechanism to stop the bombing.
Hopefully there's going to be other mechanisms to stop violence sooner rather than later. Rebecca Hamilton, thank you so much for being with us today in our stream and for your valuable, very valuable insights.
Thank you for having me.